Welcome back, ChangeMakers. This week we are continuing our conversation about playtesting and American Ninja Warrior. To recap last episode, American Ninja Warrior uses a modular design system to create their courses. This means that they're able to take a part of the course out, tweak it a bit, stick it back in, or they can replace it with a different module, and the course as a whole will still work just fine. They will also do a bit of playtesting. It usually starts in-house with their team of experts who will run through the course and just make sure that it's actually playable, it does what they want, all of that. Then, right before they do their they run their season, they do one final playtest with people that they've kind of screened that will likely fit their niche but won't actually be on the season. And they have them run through parts of the course and make sure that they know exactly how it works, that it's all set up, it's structurally sound, things like that. Finally, they actually run through the season. So this is their kind of final test where they see how it plays in actuality. Does it actually work? Did it look good the whole way through? And then the season is over. They can take pieces out and change them back in, change them up, switch in new ones, whatever. But the course as a whole can still remain mostly the same, or it knows kind of, you didn't have to change the entire course just to be able to change these tiny things. So how does this tie into role-playing games? So for me, when I start designing a role-playing game, I usually begin by borrowing some mechanics from other games. A dice rolling mechanic from here, some AC equations from over there, and I just kind of mix and match them up until I make generally a game that I want. I can also borrow from actual board games or from video games, and I can just kind of tweak them to fit exactly the feel I want. Then, because I did it in this way, I know where all of those modules are in my system, so I know where I can take them out. I know where those weak points can kind of look like. And if something goes wrong, I can take a look at it and kind of know, oh, I just need to pull out this part, tweak it a little bit, or stick in something completely different. And it'll all pretty much work fine. Then comes the play. The TTRPG equivalent to the American Ninja Warrior system is probably the Kickstarter format. So designers will often play their games with their friends, just to kind of tight-knit, experts kind of style. And then they'll immediately move to putting their game on Kickstarter. This is maybe a month or so of playtesting while it's on the Kickstarter. It's they'll usually hand everybody a beta game that they'll have paid for through the Kickstarter, and then once the Kickstarter is over, they'll make the real game and hand it to those playtesters. And then the game is published. It's just ready to go. I'm not a huge fan of this method. I understand that it's usually a imitation of what larger publishing houses tend to do, where it will be, you do it with your friends, you do maybe a couple of playtests, you publish it, and then you start your next season. Starting version 2 or 3 or 3.5 or 4. You get the idea. The main issues that I have with this version of it is they don't usually have the funding to be able to back it. They don't have the funding, they don't have the people, and they don't have the name behind them. They don't have the names Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or things like that, things that people know. And you can just drag people off the street and they'll go, oh yeah, I know D&D. I can play a game, even if they absolutely have never played the game before or have any idea what it is. The main issues with the system are that you have no control over your players. These are usually blind playtests, so not only are you not in the room with them, you can't even mark down what they've done. You're relying entirely on the players to be able to give you your playtest information. So for this, that means not only do they have to have read your rules properly the first time, they need to be able to recognize when your mechanics are broken and be able to comment on those kind of things. They need to be able to remember to write down in their notes that other people are leaving comments. They need to know what their own comments are, any gripes, any times that the game broke and what they did to fix it. And you have to be able to recognize that those happen and that they have that information for you. Otherwise, you're kind of in the lurch. Additionally, you're already in the publishing phase. You have a couple of months. If anything goes wrong, you're screwed. You have no time to be able to fix that and publish it and make it good in time for those people who backed your game and paid for it to be able to have a quality game that they worked for, that they helped with. That's so mean. I don't like that. Not only is that a whole lot of pressure on the designers and on the publishing team at all, just to make sure that it actually looks good, it works well, all of that within that short span of time, if anything gets screwed up. That's huge. Finally, you don't even know these people. You don't know if they matched your target audience. You don't know why they're playing your game or what they're interested in or anything like that. So when you playtest with these people, you're getting feedback from absolute strangers. You don't know if they match your market. The market for ChangeMakers is like 5th to 8th grade. And I can say with most certainty that I'm likely not going to find that group on Kickstarter. I think in person, I know a whole one person who fits that group. And I'm not even sure if he actually likes role-playing games. And that's just so small. That's so not helpful. Let alone being able to find a DM who would be willing to play this game. And there's no way to find it. The best I've been able to find is just asking on Reddit and hoping that people respond and can do this. In which case, I'll often get results that are very similar to the blind playtesting that I just described. And why that was a bad idea. Just as erratic, just as not helpful. Which brings me to the next point in what has now become a rant. But barriers to access. These aren't just disability barriers, though there are definitely some of those. But also just like income barriers and things like that. Connections and things like that. For me, for ChangeMakers, I went to a convention and found Playtest Northwest and went, wow, maybe I could use these people. They are mostly for board games, so not really set up for a 4-hour play session with a DM. But I was able to get a little bit of information by completely modifying parts of my game into a board game format. So I could test one mechanic at a time, which is kind of helpful, but doesn't really give me the bigger picture. Luckily, at another convention that I went to, Playtest Northwest introduced me to Geek Girl Scouts, which is perfect. It was in my niche. It was doing role-playing games. It was great. And I got quite a few of those playtests in before COVID hit and we stopped playtesting. But honestly, the fact that I needed to be in a group in order to get to a group that was actually in my niche is kind of rough. I had tried so many other ways to try and get into that, into groups like that, things like Narrative Games Northwest, any of the board game cafes or things such like that, trying to do just playtesting at a board game store, which I know quite a few of them will do. But being able to set that up was rough. It was usually that they wouldn't let games that were in development in. They didn't particularly want to interact with RPGs, whatever the situation was. It was very tough to do. So what were the alternatives for that? Usually the alternatives would be things like paying for publicity. Again, this is part of why I'm pretty sure people use Kickstarter for their playtesting opportunities. I could call up podcasts or actual plays or things, or board game article reviews and things like that, but those are usually more for publicity's sake more than they are for playtesting a game or testing that it's ready for the market or whatever that happens to me. For that aspect of it, usually I have to be able to pay them, and if they end up, and again, I don't have any control over these, so if they end up not reading the rules correctly, if they end up breaking my game somewhere in the middle of it and just or if the game just happens to be boring, which is usually why I would think they would reject a game in development for something like that, is they have to be able to sell their own stuff on this. If you're doing an actual play, you want it to at least be a little bit interesting, and if my game is just really boring to play, it's probably also boring to watch. Why would they publish that? Now I just paid for them to have a crappy game. That sucks. Not all hope is lost though. I do absolutely love that the tabletop industry has a completely free market. There are no actual barriers to access. itch.io is free. I think DriveThruRPG has a little bit of a money barrier, but it's like $5 and some royalty fees. That's not very much. And you can just post your games on there. And that's great. But it does mean that you're going to end up with a lot of bad quality. It's people who don't playtest. It's people who only playtest a little bit. It doesn't feel great. And I would much prefer having an increased quality in games through playtesting. The best way to do that is through infrastructure. And the only thing I've seen so far is maybe with enough time and effort, with the introduction of safety tools, with the stay-at-home orders, increasing people's ability to play online and get introduced into RPGs that way, and just a general increase in playing role-playing games and what that means, what it means to be a casual role player, and things like that. Maybe we can have more support for being able to do actual playtests and being able to connect with people in a way that we can make more interesting, higher quality games, just overall. That is all we have for this week. In 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a pencils down post-mortem on Handle the Heat. It'll be completely done, ready for playtesting, which is the next step. Please like and subscribe to us. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. There are links to that in the description. We will see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.